Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tifltat. Things I feel like talking about today. And today is a serious topic. One very important to me. Depression. I feel like with everything going on in the world today, from that horrific tragedy in Las Vegas, to the recent passing on of musical legends like Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington, Soundgarden, Linkin Park, respectively. I've been wanting to talk to people about this for a while. I even wrote a script for this one, and I don't normally do that. But I did it so I don't mess up any of the important details. I'll make sure that there will be links in the description for sources, and links in the description for anyone out there who wants to talk about it with somebody before they make a mistake or some terrible decision that they haven't thought out yet. Depression, personally, is one of the most profound sources of pain and conflict in my life. I thought maybe seeing a therapist and taking some pills would make it all better. That the suffering would go away. It helped. Somewhat. And I improve every single day. I won't ever give up. I don't think I'd be able to talk about things like this if I hadn't. Or if I had given up. However, I find seeking the cure brought on its own sets of challenges and difficulties. The medicine had definitely made me feel less sadness. But it also left me feeling less of anything. To the point that I was feeling empty inside. And it led to more depression. I began to wonder, was I even human anymore? Is there a point to this struggle? Is there a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or is there just more shades of gray and emptiness? It turned out, and it still turns out to this day, this would be a battle I'd have to fight, likely, for the rest of my life. Why is this happening to me? Does this happen to others? I mean, therapists are a well-known profession, often with a bit of negative social stigma attached to it. But are they successful? Can they actually, help to make me better? Or am I some sort of deviation to the norm? Am I unique in this sense? Am I unique in the sense that maybe, just maybe, I'm impossible to cure? I read a lot of studies and experiments, books, documents, searching, trying to find an answer in my free time. I've read a lot of studies and a lot of impacts, and through all of it, I found that there was one that stuck with me and made me realize, in the sense that, no, I'm not alone. This has definitely happened before, and it still does. Strangely enough, it can even be caused to other species of a very wide variety. The study that I happen to call the monkey study, it's known primarily, as far as I can tell, as the pit of despair. That's the one that always stuck to me. Probably because at that point I had mostly isolated myself. And I felt to some degree that I could almost relate to these poor creatures. The pit of despair, or its proper name, vertical chamber apparatus, was concocted by a comparative psychologist by the name of Harry Harlow. He worked, researched, studied the University of Wisconsin, Madison. And this study came about in the 70s. Primarily due to the fact that his wife had passed away in 1971. which put Henry Sorry, Harry, not Henry. Henry, I was thinking Silent Hill. It put Harry in a deep, deep depressive state, which led to him being interested in it. Now, the pit of despair, there's a researcher, Stephen Suomi, I hope I said that right. He described the device as little more than a steel trowel with sides that slope to a rounded bottom. What it was a 3.5-inch wire mesh floor, 1 inch above the bottom of the chamber, which allowed waste material to drop through the drain and out of holes drilled in the stainless steel. Kept it clean, without anybody having to go in to clean it. The chamber had a food box and a water bottle. It was covered with a pyramid top designed to discourage incarcerated subjects from hanging from the top of their chamber. Harlow had already placed newly born monkeys in isolation chambers for up to 1 year. With the pit of despair, he placed monkeys between 3 months and 3 years old in the chamber alone, after they had bonded with their mothers for up to 10 weeks. Within a few days, they had stopped moving and remained huddled in a corner. He found that just as they were incapable of having sexual relations, they were also unable to parent their offspring, which were created through an awful forced breeding situation involving a rack. And I'll just leave the rest to your imagination, which would lead to them either abusing or neglecting their offspring. Not even in our most devious dreams could we have designed a surrogate as evil as these real monkey mothers were, Harry wrote. Having no social experience themselves, they were incapable of social interaction. One mother held her baby's face to the floor and chewed off his feet and fingers. Another crushed her baby's head. Most of them simply ignored their babies. These experiments showed Harlow what a total and partial isolation did to developing monkeys. But he felt he had not captured the essence of depression, which he believed was characterized by feelings of loneliness, helplessness, and a sense of being trapped, or being sunk in a well of despair, he said. Most of the monkeys put inside were at the very least 3 months old, had already bonded with other monkeys. The point was to break those bonds in order to create the symptoms of depression. The chamber was a tiny, cold metal upside-down pyramid with slippery sides slanting down to a point. The monkey was placed in that point. The opening was covered with mesh. The monkeys would spend the first day or two trying to climb up the slippery slides. After a few days, they gave up. Harlow wrote, "Most subjects typically assume a hunched position in a corner of the bottom of the apparatus. One might presume at this point that they find their situation to be hopeless." Stephen Suomi, another of Harlow's doctoral students and fellow researcher, placed some monkeys in the chamber in 1970 for his PhD. He wrote he could find no monkey who had any defense against it. Even the happiest monkeys came out damaged. He concluded that even a happy, normal childhood was no defense against depression. The experiments gave to us what Deborah Bloom, a science writer, called common sense results, that monkeys, which are very social animals in nature, much like us, emerge from isolation badly damaged, and that some recover, while others do not. That study had a very large impact on me, because monkeys are so close to us in many ways. Similar studies have been enacted on other animals, cats and dogs, birds, and they all have similar results. Turns out we might not all be that different. Now for some averages, and I'll be honest, most of these averages I came out of United States statistics because they were not only the easiest to find, but there was like more of them than anything else, so it seemed like a bigger sample pool to pull out of. But depression is the #1 psychological disorder in the Western world. It appears in all sorts of communities. It appears in all levels of wealth. The only places where it doesn't seem to actually have anything to it are actually communities like the Amish or a tribe in New Guinea. By 2020, if things continue the way they are, it will be the second most disabling condition in the world. Heart disease will still be #1. There are ways around it and ways to help with it. Example would be antidepressants. And antidepressants may sometimes control the symptoms. They'll usually do very little to give sufferers depression-free lives. Up to 20% of people all around the world experience symptoms of depression. That may not sound like much, but 10 times more people now suffer from major depression than in 1945. The average age of first onset of major depression is the ages of 25 to 29. The more common depressions are also extremely prevalent in, say, teenagers. We've probably all seen some of that if we're of proper age. But major depression tends to set in between 25 and 29. About a quarter of suicides in the United States are felt to be due to undiagnosed or misdiagnosed major depression. Up to 80% of suicide deaths are from sufferers of major depression. Why? Why is this? Why is this a thing? Because we cannot function without our basic needs. Just like any other creature or any other machine on this planet, we have very basic necessities that we require to function at utmost efficiency. Our basic needs are food, water, and shelter. But after those basic needs, we also share emotional and physical needs. And without exception, we find depressed people are not getting these needs met. These days, people are far more self-important than they used to be. And as such, considering the community to be more important than the personal self is almost impossible to understand for most people nowadays. People always ask the why. Sometimes they ask other things. Is it forever? It can be. A lot of people don't know this, but some people experience reactive depression, which occurs because of external factors. Examples listed would be, say, the death of a loved one, a famous person, or a famous musician, or someone they respected or identified with. Passing on can trigger this. Losing their job is often a trigger of this. Or maybe they lose a friend, and I don't mean in the sense that the friend has passed away, but maybe they lost a friend, maybe there was a breakup or a divisive issue that comes along. Maybe there's drama or whatever. these things, they can all trigger depression. And this type of depression may disappear. And it may go away. And it may just cease to be. When life events change. Other people deal with endogenous depression, which occurs because of internal factors. Perhaps, maybe, the neurotransmitters in your brain don't function normally, and your neurons fire. Or maybe they fail to fire. Maybe it's a combination of the both. Sometimes an external factor affects a person's behavior and outlook so dramatically that these impacts become a permanent part of that individual's personality. Permanent. No matter what the cause is, these people can do things to overcome or manage the depression, depending on how severe it is and their own genetic makeup. Sometimes these depressions, they're never going away. And this is something people need to be aware of. Not all depressions can be cured. They can be managed. But some of them cannot be cured. People say, get over it. People say, oh, you were sad last year. Why are you still sad now? Because it doesn't go away. Some of us are damaged to the point that we are left broken. And it's up to us to pick up these pieces and try to put some semblance of a life together. Some semblance of something in your head that makes you feel that things might be okay. But, as I said, this may be a condition requiring lifelong effort. The best examples I found were like hypertension or diabetes. There's lifestyle changes. There's certainly medications that you can use to treat these illnesses. Sometimes get rid of it completely. However, as discussed, this can come with a heavy cost. The ability to feel and experience any emotion, let alone bad ones. But these underlying conditions might just be part of your genetic makeup. And that's how it comes down to it. So, things I've tried and things that I know that are available. Medicine. For some people, the medicine has been very effective. Be it Zoloft or Effexor or some other brand name of some kind of antidepressive medication. But I don't feel they're right for me. Because not only do they kill off my sadness, they kill off everything else. I don't show it very well, but when I was on these medications, I know some people saw me as a completely different person. Because I wasn't myself. I was a different person. I didn't cry when I was sad, but I didn't laugh when I was happy. I'd often drift off into my own little world and not be part of this one. It was like looking at everything through, just shades of gray. Black and white. There was no way to live for me. I enjoy the happy tears. When they're happy. I enjoy a good laugh. I don't like things that take these away from me. Because after years and years of being on these antidepressants, I began to feel empty inside. Like just a hollow shell, and I just didn't want to go on anymore. It felt like suffrage. Suffrage I wanted no part of. And that's why I feel medicine isn't good for me. However, therapy was very helpful to have this available to me. Because as you remember from some of the things that we discussed earlier, isolation is a very, a very big part of this disease. Having someone to talk to, face, is very important, especially when that person is trained with a variety of methods to help guide you in the right direction to wellness, to help you feel better, to help mellow out your moods, breathing techniques, nutrition advice, and even propose some activities for you to do, most often for free, within your community. Hooking you up with some fellow like-minded individuals just so you have someone to talk to. And don't worry, none of these people look at you like you're crazy, because generally it's part of some kind of group or club or hobby or interest, and that's what's bringing them there, and you're kind of just there for that, but also just have someone to talk to. I wish I knew that at the time. There's a few groups I'd still like to be a part of. And as strange as it sounds, the therapist may also tell you, try to get some sun and try to get some exercise. Maybe just a walk. Something to get the heart rate up. Because one of the most common things I've found that's helped is to get the heart rate up. Now, I don't mean in the anxious, anxiety sort of sense, where you're paralyzed and your heart won't stop and you just feel uncomfortable top to bottom. No, I mean like, go for a walk for 20, 30 minutes. Come back and sit down, sip on your water, and tell me you don't feel more alive. Tell me you can't feel your heartbeat going and your blood pumping. It does something to the brain, releases a chemical, I assume. But it definitely helps you feel better. With me, things that triggered me, there was a fair amount of them. I've spoken on this before. My channel avatar is a flag of the such, but I'm transgender. My journey finally this year got to its conclusion. And I am much happier on the inside now. It's strange being able to look into a mirror and not feel complete revulsion and disgust, but actually experience happiness and joy. But I know a lot of people can't relate to the struggle that a transgender individual might go through. So that's why, for the most part of this, I've tried to keep it out of it. And I will for the rest of it. Just wanted to put that out there, kind of a full disclosure sort of thing. But I know some experiences that everybody can relate to, I think. Hatred. Any kind of hatred. I'm a person with a lot of empathy. I'll absorb emotions and feelings from the people around me. As such, I've taken steps to try and eliminate media from my life. Not entirely, because it's important to have some self-awareness and awareness of your surroundings, but the amount that I used to take in was too much, and it would actually have an effect on my mood. Like I referred earlier to the recent massacre, terrorist attack. Yes, it was a terrorist attack, even if it was only one person as of this recording. That was an act of terrorism. That can't be disputed, I don't think. But actions like that, they cause my mood to suffer. And that is the goal of terrorism, I believe. Not to depress everybody, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's to scare everybody and to mess up people's lives. To gain something by causing pain. Other things that might trigger depression, finances. Maybe you lost your job, or money's just tight this month. There'll be people out there that'll tell you, oh, come on, everyone has money problems. Yes, everyone does have money problems. Some people's money problems are more profound than other people's money problems. I imagine, say, PewDiePie wouldn't have near as many money issues as, say, the homeless guy on the street. They're not indifferent income brackets. They're not at different tax levels. One of them has no money. One of them can't do anything. One of them can't pay bills. And there are people that believe that money is the gateway to success and freedom and liberty. I choose not to believe that personally. But if you are a person that believes that, then not having money would be a huge stress on you. Bills, typically. Bills typically were a big trigger. Even sometimes when I could pay them, no problem. It was still just a weight. A weight on my mind and my shoulders. We won't even get into when, people start calling a person looking for money. Because then the phone itself becomes a source of stress. Oh God, who's calling now? What do they want? Just leave me alone, please. If any of those thoughts sound familiar, know that you're not alone. Watching people treat each other like utter garbage. That will drop my mood immediately, even if it's not aimed at me. Watching people bully another person, it's heartbreaking. Because I don't think they even realize what they're doing to that person. I think some obviously do. Sociopaths are a known thing. But I think some people aren't even aware of the damage that they're actually causing to these people. It's a real shame. Because I think if they knew, they wouldn't do it. How social a person is can also be impacted by things like bullying, and being social, believe it or not, is one of the key factors when it comes to helping a depressed person. A lot of people, when they get depressed, you'll notice, will start to isolate themselves, close themselves off from the rest of the world, stay in their home, stay in their room, and just stay away from other people. Some will express an anxiety of going to the store. There's a lot of things like that that will just drive a person further and further down into that pit of despair. I've already made reference to tragedy and events. Those will always hurt my mood. I'm sure they hurt the mood of other people. But one of the biggest that I'm aware of personally would be reminders or flashbacks. The reminders, let's go back to an earlier example about finances and bills, like those bills and those debt collectors that would constantly be reminding you that you're falling behind, that you're going down in that hole, and there ain't no way to come back, because these people just want their money and they don't give a... They just don't care. They just want their money. And those feelings by themselves can weigh a lot on a person's head, but I also said flashbacks. And that goes hand in hand with trauma. If you've experienced trauma of any kind, be it physical trauma like I have, emotional trauma like I have, any trauma, it's all trauma. Trauma can lead to us constantly living in a loop where we constantly reference those things that damaged us irreparably. And the constant thinking of those things makes a person feel worse and worse and smaller. Even right now, I'm still having flashbacks to a time when I was assaulted. I'm still fighting that, and it's been 3 years. But enough about things that trigger. What about some things that help? Sleep. Believe it or not, sleep is huge. I used to work a shift schedule that would go back and forth between day shifts and night shifts, and I couldn't sleep very well because I'd be constantly flip-flopping to going to work in the morning and going to work at night. I couldn't get a routine sleep schedule, and I honestly believe that was killing me on the inside. After a couple years of having a normal sleep schedule, I'm so much more cognitive. I eat better, I breathe better, I think better. Sleep is important. So try to make sure that you get your sleep, but don't get too much. Because I also learned, too much sleep is just as damaging. Because then you'll start to feel things like you've wasted half your day. You're a lazy piece of garbage. You'll never amount to anything staying in bed like that. No wonder you're always sick. And other such mental thoughts that just beat me down further and further. Helped by other people who would say these things to me. And the sad part is I don't think most of them were trying to hurt me. I think they were actually trying to help. And I gotta say this one, even though I know some of the people listening to this video, they will have a major problem with doing this, but friends, socialization, even a little. And I'm not talking about chat rooms. Though to be honest, I think those help too. They've helped me quite a bit over the years. Talked me out of doing some things I didn't want to do. And just being there to listen to you at any time of day. Sometimes even that helps. But it doesn't help near as much as a person-to-person interaction. Now, if you don't have any friends and you want to know how am I supposed to get person-to-person interaction, go to a park. See if you can find a club or some kind of organization in your area that might have similar interests to you. Go see what they're about. Call them up and ask them if you can shadow in there. So you can meet a couple people and say hi. And I know when you're really isolated and really heavily depressed, that can be a really hard thing to do. But it's something that you have to do. If you want to get better, it's something that you have to do. Because humans are social creatures. This is scientifically proven. Just like a lot of other creatures on this planet, we desire, we need, we crave social interaction. And when we take that away from ourselves, it just causes hurt. It's not to say, if you're isolated, that you can't be anything. Emily Dickinson was quite isolated. She wrote some of the most beautiful phrases, poems, and songs that literature has ever had. She also kind of went crazy in the end, so take that with a grain of salt. Things that have helped me, animals, big time. If I didn't have my animals to listen to me and just be there with me and be my little animal buddies, I don't know what I'd be. I don't know what I'd do. I probably would have gone crazy a long time ago. But just the feeding them and caring of them. Even that gets some of that socialization that I spoke of out of your system. It's not the same as human-to-human interaction. But it helps. Even a little. Nutrition is surprisingly big. I say surprisingly because a lot of people aren't aware that our body is very much like a car. It requires certain things inside of it to function properly. When you put the wrong things in it, it functions incorrectly and can even break down. If you don't put anything in it at all, it just won't work. It'll seize up and just sit there and eventually die. Nutrition is our gasoline. It keeps us full of energy but it also keeps our brains going full tilt. So please, try to eat something balanced. And I mean, you can't miss when it comes to simple stuff: oatmeal, bananas, rice, bread, fruits and vegetables. I'm not saying eat everything that there is out there to eat, just a balance. Exercise comes with nutrition, and it's just as important. I've already mentioned before, earlier in the video, about the walking. Any kind of exercise is great to stave off depression. I know there are people that are physically limited, disabled. I'm one of them. There's only certain things I can do, and I try to make sure to do them every day, because even those help. But don't worry. I don't think it's so much a requirement, because I've met plenty of happy people that are completely incapable of exercise. But for those that are capable of doing it, give it a shot. It doesn't have to be like half your day, an hour, or anything crazy like that. A couple walks a week, 10, 15 minutes. Even that'll help. The biggest thing, though, in my opinion, is to limit media intake and electronic use. Yeah, I'm talking about your computer. I'm talking about your consoles. I'm talking about your TV. I'm talking about Netflix. I'm talking about that damn phone in your hands. And the reason I'm talking about that phone in your hand and everything else related is because too much media saturation kills the brain. Just kills it dead. You ever see somebody that's way too into their phone? They forget to bring it to work. And they go crazy. There's a reason for that. It's because it's not healthy. I think media is great. I think it's fantastic. But even I can see if you spend your entire day in front of a computer and not outside talking to people, even on the phone, that you're going to feel isolated and lonely after not too long. It doesn't take a person of great intelligence to see that. But there's a lot of people that don't see it because they simply never think of it. The examples, in my mind, of things that have really been hurt by depression, things that are caused by depression, and things that are related to depression. I always make reference to the couch, because that's where I go. That's the bottom of my pit of despair, the trough of steel with the slanted sides to keep me from climbing out. The couch. I can sit on this thing paralyzed with anxiety and fear for hours on end. And there's no escape. Why do I come to the couch? Because I used to go to the bed. And then once I got in the bed, I didn't get out of the bed. So I'd just take repeated naps and just stay in there for days. At least with the couch, I'm only here for a few hours. But even this has become my prison. Fortunately, I take a couple walks a day now. I have friends that I talk to now. I have animals that I take care of. So it's not as much of a prison. But when people talk about being paralyzed with fear, anxiety, and depression, I know exactly what that means, and I call it the couch. But depression has cost me a lot of things. Primarily friends. That might seem weird to some people. They say, wait, if they were real friends, they'd be there for you if you were depressed. And that's true. They would. And most of them were. But when you try to help somebody and they don't get better, depending on the person and the amount of time, generally they'll all walk away. They give up. Because they see you as a lost cause. They see you as a person that's not going to change. They see you as a defect or a failure. Some will even call you toxic because you feel this way. But those weren't the only friends I lost. And I think I still have some friends that are still my friends, but it's been so many years since I talked to them, I don't even know. But it was my isolation that took them from me. And that's on me. That's on me for not being able to dig myself out of this hole. It's on me for not being able to get out of bed. Or to get off the couch. To get in my car and go and visit them while I could. I sincerely hope those friends know that I do love them. It's just I've been here in my own prison. And that wasn't just a Creed reference. It's the truth. There's been a lot of musicians in my life. And I don't even want to think about how many of them died by their own hand. Or too much pills. Or they drank too much one night and asphyxiated. I don't want to think about them that way. I choose to remember them in their years of greatness. The first one I can really remember hitting me super hard was Nirvana, Kurt Cobain. And I'm not even sure to this day that that was a suicide. There's too much ballistics evidence there that makes no sense. Like, that he was shot from across the room. They had so much heroin in his system that it would drop an elephant. I know you build a resistance to this stuff. But the amount in his system, like, I don't even know he could pick anything up. Let alone survive that long enough to do what he did. My earliest memory of that was indeed Nirvana. The most recent, Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. Before him, Chris Cornell of Soundgarden. There's other people in the music industry that died, I'd say due to depression. It may have been undiagnosed. Some of it was diagnosed. Lead singer of Alice in Chains, for example. The original singer to AC/DC, Bon Scott. They died of drinking too much. Why were they drinking too much, though? Were they just party animals, or were they trying to bury something deep inside them? It's things like that that have really made me think. So many musicians I've loved and cared about that have gone that way. Even Michael Jackson. Doctor assisted, whether he wanted it or not. Isolation is another big factor that I've already touched on, so I won't go into detail again. Family. I know my family loves me, and I'm lucky. Because I went from seeing them every 2 weeks to maybe once a year, twice a year. And that hurts. Because it's not something I want. Starting to dig myself out of my depression. My car breaks down. Start to fix my car, and the bills start piling up. And it sounds like I'm making excuses, doesn't it? But that's how it goes. Some people call that life. I call it the struggle. But at the very least, I know I always have Christmas. Make a big visit. See everybody. For me, depression has impacted me big in income. I used to have a job that paid a lot of money an hour. A damn fine job, may I say. A good job. and a lot of good people that work there. But because of the actions of myself when I was suffering these things, I don't work there anymore. And I fully admit the actions were not entirely my own doing. But I know that there was plenty of actions that were my own doing. I've apologized for those actions, and I will continue to apologize for those actions for the rest of my life. Not because they were evil, or hate-filled or anything, but because I do feel genuinely bad about it. Would I ever go back to work there? No. No. Never. Never ever. I used to call the place toxic. I believe to some degree it is toxic. But to some degree I think it just wasn't for me. But eventually depression took all that from me. And I had to make a choice. Did I want to keep trying to stay there, or should I move on? And so I moved on. And now I survive on a very, very minimal amount of money a month, and I can barely make ends meet. And that can lead to depression. Now, personally, to get out of where I was working before in the negative environment and all that stuff that it was, which, again, I say, partially due to my depression, partially due to people being anti-transgender, partially just due to so much BS. I'm glad for the experience. I truly am. I'm glad for the income that I had for the time that I was there. I'm glad for the experiences provided to me and the lessons that I've learned. But honestly, on a whole, I'm a much happier person now. Maybe someday I'll get to run into some of them old co-workers. Show them what I'm made of now, huh? So yeah, at least I'm happy with the meager amount that I pull in now. I am. Because I can be me freely. And I don't feel that persecution and paranoia every day, and I don't have to return to the place where I was assaulted, where I've received brain damage and still suffer post-traumatic stress disorder due to this day. But there was a lot of happy memories there. And when those memories come back, it does help with depression, doesn't it? No, makes it worse. So people might wonder why I made this long video. Because I wanted to talk and get my feelings out. And tell people depression isn't as black and white as some people would make you think it to be. When it came to that pit of despair, most of those monkeys never recovered. And when it comes to depression, a lot of us humans will never heal. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and remember to reference the materials I put in the description. If you're suffering, if there's any pain in your life, please seek help. Don't be ashamed. I wish I wasn't. I wish I started years ago. But hindsight is always 20/20. I look to the future now. I move in a forward direction. Some might say a better way forward. Heh. Some people get that. But you gotta move forward. You gotta be there for the friends and family that care for you. And you mustn't be ashamed of yourself for feeling this way. Because remember, it happens in the wildlife world. It happens in the natural world. Depression is not a human construct. And it's not even a disease. It's literally genetic, situational, and oppressive. And something that, for some people, will be a battle that they will fight for the rest of their lives. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this subject. I'm sure this video will be demonetized immediately. But that's fine, because I'll leave it up. I want people to know that there's other people out there just like them. There are other people that are suffering. And we can come together and we can move forward together. I'm Melodati. And this was things I feel like talking about today. Until next time, stay strong. Bye-bye.